Welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. We are so glad that you're with us. This is episode 3. I mean, 3 episodes in, and that means people are still watching if they see this right now. So congratulations to you. There are at least dozens of you.
Or maybe they just started.
Dozens of us.
Maybe they skipped the first 2.
That's true. Could be the first time. Welcome, if that's true.
The key is if people are still watching, like we have no clue. Like,
we have no idea.
We could just be throwing this out into the universe and nobody's paying attention.
Well,
This
there are
is possible.
charts. We can chart.
This is something that we make so that we can show it to our mom. Like, Mom, look at our podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom.
Mom,
like
I know
that.
you're going to watch this.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us
Thank
today.
you. There's 3 people watching. Yes. Thank you, moms. So this week, we're diving into content. We're challenging people to make bold moves. And we're challenging people to think about what you are committed to. Because what we talked about at Crossroads this week is what you are committed to reveals your character. And your character is who you are when nobody's watching. It's who you are when everybody's watching. Like it's who you are at your innermost heart.
Yeah.
And so what you're committed to, what you spend your time on, what you're giving your best and your first to, that reveals your character. And this all ties to the story of Abraham that we were looking at this week, where he starts negotiating with God. Like God says, hey, we're going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Like this is going to end badly for them. It's a terrible place. It needs to cease to exist.
I just remember something about Lot and pitching tents. That's what I remember.
Yes.
Let's not go back there.
That did happen. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
We all have very different pictures in our mind of Lot after last week's episode.
Yeah.
So this is your first time watching.
Yeah.
Go back and check out
should
episode
probably
2
watch
for
out.
context.
What he was doing was already bad enough.
It
Now
was
that adds
already
to it.
bad.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing
Yes,
that
of
up.
course,
Yeah. So Abraham is negotiating with God. He's saying, God, that's not who you are, because by nature, that's not God's nature. He is a God that loves. And so Abraham recognizes this, and he's like, God, surely you won't wipe away the righteous with the wicked, is what Abraham says.
Mm-hmm.
If there's 50 people, you can't wipe out the city, and God agrees to that. Like, I mean, it's pretty, it's a big move for, talk about bold moves. Abraham is negotiating
with God, who's the creator, who makes everything happen, who can do anything he wants to do.
Yes.
He's actually hearing us out, which is crazy.
But we've all been there.
we
I've done that.
We have. Yes.
Not proud of it, but I've done it.
But yep, we've all had that moment. Come on. Okay. So, I mean, Abraham, for all intents, he does a great job negotiating. He gets God down to 10 people. That's pretty awesome. I wish if you're buying a car, bring Abraham with you.
I was going to say, is he for hire somewhere?
He needs to be like the new Priceline negotiator. Like, Priceline negotiator. Is that just me? Am I the only guy that knows that?
I don't know what you're talking about, but okay.
I think it's William Shatner. Isn't he?
That's all I can think is Bill Shatner. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. William Shatner. Is he still alive?
Maybe.
Okay.
Don't know.
I haven't seen him in a while. I think it's somebody else now on the Priceline commercials. Not that this is a promotion for Priceline.
I don't watch commercials.
What? That's a problem. Okay.
Do you pay for or not pay for streaming services?
I am on the cheap side of things, so I don't know. Maybe I watch more commercials than other people.
Sorry. Anyway,
it has been revealed in episode 3 that I am apparently a huge cheapskate. So
there you go.
So at the bottom line, at the end of the day, Abraham is negotiating with God, and it reveals something really important about his character, because he deeply cares about the eternal destiny of these people in Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah. And I think that's critical when we talk about the idea of bold moves and bold moves that God asks us to make. I think we've got to consider that question: who am I willing to boldly invite to experience a changed life? Who am I willing to step out of my comfort zone and connect with Jesus? And that's us living with an eternal perspective. That's us in our character, showing what we're committed to, of realizing, we've all got one shot at this life. And if we truly believe that Jesus is the answer that everyone is looking for, that he is the hope for eternity, then if I recognize that there are people in my life who are desperate for Jesus, I need to be intentional. That reveals my character. I need to show that I truly care. I want to do everything I can to connect them with Jesus. Right. So the question is, who are you inviting? And I think it's it's really important for us to wrap our minds around the fact that all of us started our journey with Jesus because of an invitation, somewhere. Like we all were the recipients of an invitation to a changed life. That's who Jesus is. That's what he's all about. The invitation changes anything. It changes everything.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, do you guys have any stories of an invitation, someone you've invited, or maybe how an invitation changed your life? Does that land or resonate with anybody?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell a little bit like my story when I gave my life to Christ. It was on like a youth retreat weekend. Yeah. And I remember getting the invite to go on this because it was really like, I didn't really know what it was all about.
Sure.
It was pretty secretive. And
What kind of a youth retreat was this?
Yeah,
Like
secretive.
it was not a cult, I promise. The whole point was just to make sure that you're like not anticipating everything that's going to happen and just kind of be present in the moment. This really was before people all had cell phones, but that's the thing now is just like put some of your technology away.
Yes.
Don't be answering to notifications all the time.
That makes sense.
But it was that invitation for me to go on that weekend. And like, I knew like God was working in my heart anyway, but it took a step of somebody to ask me to be part of that for me to finally like get over the edge. Yeah. And it was, it changed everything at that point.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a direct result of an invitation. Your life is changed by that.
For sure. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Kristen, you got anything for that?
Well, thinking back, like I've been a Christian since I was born. That's really awkward.
Have you?
I'm just kidding. I was always very involved in church. I was always very excited about it. But I think my invitation was probably always taking a next step deeper into like the getting more involved is what we talked about. I've been invited to various other things where I mean, I could have just kind of stayed the same and gone to church, done the motions, all that. But it was the next thing, whether it was some kind of group or way to serve or something like that. So those invitations made a stronger impact than, well, I shouldn't say a stronger impact. Like,
well, they're all
making a
stepping
decision for
stones to
Jesus.
something deeper. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just because when I say it was born like that, I just grew up like in this pattern of like knowing, loving Jesus. And it was just always further and further and further.
Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic. I think for me, I'm kind of a similar experience. I grew up as a pastor's kid. My first memories are in church. Like, so it's kind of feels like you were always part of that. But there's a distinct memory that I have in high school where there was a special guest speaker, the evangelist, that had preached the old school fire and brimstone, sermon. And for whatever reason, it resonated with me. And I realized, I'm not right with Jesus. And it's one of those, it was a come to Jesus moment for me. I'll never forget the invitation was to come forward and receive Jesus. Like, if you need to pray that prayer, come forward and pray the prayer. Like, come accept Jesus into your life. And I remember having that moment where I was like, I need to go. I'm looking around. I'm going, I'm not going to be the first person to go. And
were you first?
No, I wasn't. There was a girl named Tanya in my youth group. It was two people down. Tanya went first, and I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, honestly, that's a big deal, right? It was the invitation, and then somebody else was obedient. I'm like, all right, it took one other person, but I went.
She's probably leading really big time.
Yeah, like, she's way better person than I am. I mean, that's a fact.
It was like birthright. Like, you could have had her birthright.
But she stepped out and stole the blessing. Yeah, Tanya.
It's on you. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Tanya Harding. That was her name.
Name drop.
Oh my!
It wasn't Tanya Harding.
Whatever you do, just don't go break
Tanya,
a leg now.
That was funny. Ice cold. I get you.
How old is our audience is what we're about to find out.
If they don't know Tanya Harding or Nancy Kerrigan, they do not like our podcast.
I remember back to what you were saying about like kind of just growing up in church. I know I've heard you say like, I was really good at popping wheelies on the wheelchair. So was I. Like, I spent a lot of time on the wheelchair, and it's like riding a bike. You get back on the wheelchair and just pop them right up.
You can still do it. Still contend. I tell Dana this. I will be the life of the party someday at the nursing home. I'm gonna own that place. It's gonna be awesome.
We should totally have a race sometime for sure.
Why not? So my thing is, I on the other side of that, one time when I was in college, I worked at a place called the Safety Harbor Resort and Spa down in like St. Pete area. Ritzy place. I was the bellman and the guy who valet parked cars. So it was like kind of a glamorous college job. It was actually a great job. Make great tips. It was fun. I remember.
What was the nicest car you valet parked?
You know what I really liked were the Jaguars at that time. Jaguar is just a nice car. So yeah, for whatever. There was one of my buddies parked a Ferrari, and he really did. He took it for like a little test drive. You are not supposed to do that.
I was going to say, can you do that?
No, but yes, because you have the keys to the car. So, but no, you cannot do that. It did happen once that I know of. But I remember I invited some of those buddies. Our church had a friend day. It was like, invite your friends to church. And I took the risk. Like, I invited all of them. And to my shock, they all came out and joined us at church. And what happened was like the most horrifying thing, because friend day at the church I visited or attended was like, this old like Southern gospel-y group that was all wearing these bright purple matching outfits that were just
awful.
It was really awkward. It was embarrassing.
Purple
it's
is the color of royalty, they say, but I don't know.
But maybe
what did your
not
friends
this thing.
think of?
So that was the thing. I invited them. I put myself out there. I invited them to something, and it ended up being like a really embarrassing moment where I felt like I had to apologize. Guys, I'm sorry that this was the experience, because it just didn't match up with their life and who I knew they were.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, as a pastor now, I'm trying to be as intentional as I can as creating an environment at church where when people invite someone to join them, they're not going to be
There's
embarrassed.
No apologies.
The purple people leaders aren't leading worship or singing their special songs. And I have to be honest, we're about to spend 5 good minutes with a good friend of mine, Kevin Jack, who does a great job of creating an environment and a culture for people to be inviters, and a culture that's great for people to come to for the first time. So I think this is the perfect time to welcome Kevin Jack to the Bold Moves podcast. So we welcome our good friend Kevin Jack. Kevin, it is great to have you on the Bold Moves podcast. As we previously discussed, it's episode 3. There are dozens of people watching this. It's going to be fantastic.
Hey, we just added Kevin's mom.
Kevin's mom's now watching.
So
all of our
we said our moms were watching, and your moms were watching. So, woohoo.
This is hilarious. Kevin, we're talking about making the bold move of inviting someone in your life that you recognize is desperate for the hope of Jesus, to making that bold move and inviting them to experience what you've experienced in the hope of Jesus. And you do a great job of creating culture and setting up the opportunities for people to invite others. Can you just give us kind of some of your insights and thoughts about that, of what it takes to invite people in that bold move?
First, if I could just ask one brief question.
Absolutely.
So this is episode 3.
Episode 3.
And Tim, you're one of my best friends.
Yes.
So who made episode 1 and 2?
So listen, episode 2 was Remington. You know Remington Anxoris down in St. Pete? Yeah, you got to bring him in. Yeah. Truth be told, there was no guest for episode 1. So really, I mean, you're basically it.
I'm satisfied.
Yeah, you are number 1. Yeah. And it needed to be that way.
I was about ready to log off right now, but
it's so good. We should have told him this was episode 1. That was our mistake, Kevin.
Yeah.
That's my bad. It's my bad. Thank you.
So let me. So inviting people to church.
Yep.
So I would say, like, there's a couple things within there, but first, if I could share just my own experience.
Yeah.
When I was, and I now know this as my call to ministry. I wouldn't have clarified it as that in the moment.
Oh, that's interesting.
So when I was 16 years old, I had a friend who was much cooler than me. His name is Sean Combs. We called him Puff Daddy.
Absolutely, as you should have.
And then later called him P. Diddy when his name changed. And Sean was a lot cooler than me. I have no idea why Sean was my friend, but he was a lot cooler than me in one of those scenarios. And
most of Kevin's friends are actually cooler than him. For the record,
are you saying that about yourself, or?
Okay.
Since you said most, I'll say most as well. Maybe not everybody, but
other friends. Yeah.
Okay.
So Sean's asking a bunch of questions about God and Jesus and church, and he didn't go. And so I did what I was supposed to do, and I invited him to church. And he went to church with me on a Sunday morning and was absolutely bored out of his mind.
Yeah. Yep.
Like it was doing like all the things that we almost laugh at. He was still standing after worship when everyone had already sat down because we knew when to sit.
Yes.
Yeah. Just go through all that. About 2/3 of the way through the message, he pulled out the church I was in. We had hymnals.
Yes.
Books with all the songs.
I remember
in
those.
it. So he pulled out the hymnal and found all the like patriotic songs that are in the back of the hymnal, and started trying to figure out the tune to "God Save the Queen," like fairly loudly during the message.
Okay, got it. So he wasn't exactly fully engaged, is what you're saying.
Nope.
Yeah.
So he left. Never came back.
Yes.
Never asked a question about God or church again.
And that's brutal. That's brutal.
And I just kind of like, I remember in the moment I had this conviction of to go, like, I realized that for my friend who didn't know Jesus to get something out of church, he would have to be saved and significantly discipled before anything we were doing made any sense to him whatsoever.
That matters.
So it really for me created this conviction and I know this feels weird, but I remember at 16 thinking, if I ever have the opportunity to lead in a church in any way, I want to make sure no one feels how my friend did.
Yeah.
And no one feels how I did in that moment.
That's really good.
Because it's awful.
Yep.
And so that is really, and like, I say it as to go, like, as the pastor today, I still look back at that moment as that is the thing that is driving me more than anything else. And so there's this like one part that I know for Crossroads, and I know you guys and your team, one part it is like creating an environment where guests are welcomed and not excluded.
Yes. Yep, for sure.
Making it clear for them on how to take a step.
Yep.
Making aware, like, we care about your presence.
Yeah.
Like, we welcome guests every week. We don't make them stay because that's awkward, but we're just like, we're there, we're welcome. So like, that's the one part of it. But I would say then there's this other part of it that I think it's really easy when you have followed Jesus for a period of time to become so used to what it looks like to have God in your life that you begin to take it for granted. Yeah. Yeah. And I would actually say my wife is the best evangelist I know in the world. And I don't mean evangelist like in the typical sense of like touring person who talks about Jesus.
Right.
Right.
I mean evangelist like in the literal definition of someone who shares with people what they're excited about.
Yeah. Yeah, she's great at that.
And it's unbelievable. Like, she's got this down pat where like she'll walk up to someone. She knows which questions to ask to prompt an invitation to church. And I've watched her do it enough that I was like, so she'll walk up to someone and she'll go, because we're pastors, and she'll walk up to someone and just be like, oh, have you always lived in Florida? I'll be like, no. Oh, what brought you to Florida? They'll give the answer. And I asked her one time, I was like, why do you always do that? And she goes, because people always respond with the same questions that you just asked. And then they'll ask me, have you always lived in Florida? No. Yeah. Why'd you move to Florida? We moved here to be a part of this church. And then I get to ask them, are you guys a part of a church?
Oh, that's amazing. Nice. She's thinking like 6 steps ahead of everybody else, Kevin. That's amazing.
It's unbelievable. Like, we've had people have said, like, I've been trying to figure out a way to share God, to share Jesus with this person for years. And your wife came up and in 15 seconds did what I have been attempting for years to do.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And so, but I think it comes out of this. I think we think that the technique is the thing that matters most. And the reality is that you'll always excuse your way out of a technique. Maybe this parallel, like, sometimes I would rather design a workout program than actually work out.
Yes, there it is. No, I don't know what you mean at all by that, Kevin.
Let me research what is the best way to diet possibly.
Yes.
Yeah.
In my research, I will eat a bowl of ice cream while I'm doing it.
That's exactly
Good
right.
plan.
Because I got to figure out what's right first. And so I think we can think like the technique is the thing that matters most. And the reality is to go, I believe that we're called through scripture to look back on the transformation that Jesus has made in our own life as the implication for why we should be so urgent in how we share the gospel.
Oh, that's so good.
Right.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
And I love the title of the podcast. Your podcast is Bold Moves.
Yeah.
And I think the bold moves only happen when you have urgent implications. That really if you don't have urgent implications, you will always find a reason to delay the move.
Yep.
But when scripture says quite clearly, it says like, you don't know if you have tomorrow.
Yes.
And you don't know when Jesus will return. And then it gives the like sharing in the bit. It says like, let's not be the person who is just storing up things in the storehouse when Jesus returns
Yeah.
And he finds us fat and gluttons. That's my interpretation at the end, just to be clear. That's not literal. But I believe that. I believe that when we see the urgency of the implication to share the good news of Jesus with someone, knowing that not one of us is promised tomorrow, that our response will be boldness in our actions, and we'll figure out the technique as we go.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Kevin, thank you for sharing that with us. And honestly, that lines up perfectly with what we're talking about, the invitation, the bold move to invite someone. Kevin, I want to put a cherry on the top of that. The bold move, it comes out of that sense of urgency. That is a great concept. And that's something that we can't lose sight of, because you're right, man. Nobody is guaranteed tomorrow. Man, we might be that one voice that stands between them and an eternal destiny it's apart from Jesus. And we got to take that seriously.
People are waiting for that invitation.
Yes,
so they're waiting for your wife to come and talk to them. Or,
we need Bethany to just walk around with all of us everywhere we go.
Yeah. If I learned anything today, it's don't play chess with Bethany, because she's thinking way ahead.
That is true. That is also true. That is awesome. Kevin, thank you for joining us on our podcast. And, maybe after we talk about how this went, we'll consider inviting you to join us some other time, way, way down the road.
Oh, yeah. Not until episode 100 plus, right?
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds right. Episode 103. That's when we'll that'll be good. Kevin, thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks for joining us, man.
Grateful for you.
See you, Kevin.
It is always good talking with Kevin. I love that guy. Yeah. And now I feel a little bit bad that we didn't invite him to be on the first episode, to be clear. We probably shouldn't have brought that up, episode 3. In hindsight, we'll figure that out. We'll be better hosts moving forward. So we love you, Kevin.
When has he invited you to his podcast?
Oh, that's a great point.
We didn't really talk about that.
Suddenly, I'm really angry. And I am unsettled right now.
And he said he's like 200 in. So
that's unbelievable.
I can't even believe.
This is an outrage.
It is.
Okay.
It really is.
All right. I feel thank you guys. I feel a lot better. That was therapeutic for me. Hey, let's talk about this. I loved what he said about Bethany, about just she's so intentional with her conversations, the questions that she asks. What a great idea and just kind of strategy to have about being intentional in inviting others to a changed life. I thought that was great. Did you guys have any thoughts about that at all? Did that resonate with you?
Yeah. So actually, I got a text message recently about someone who she does that. She puts herself out there and just makes sure that people know that basically she's on mission. She's just sharing about church and her experience and changed life. And someone sent her a message saying, "I've passed Crossroads 100 times over the last so many years. And I think I'm going to come because of what you share and how you put that
just
out
on
there
social
and
media."
Inviting. Yeah. And that's exactly what she needed. She needed that invite, that encouragement to come. So
that's
just
awesome.
Living on mission really makes a difference.
It matters. Yeah. Being intentional in those conversations.
For sure. And it's like, like Kevin was explaining for Bethany, the example of somebody who was trying to invite somebody to church for 15 years and you just did what I couldn't do. The truth of the matter is we can talk ourselves out of a lot of things.
Yes.
When really we just need to go for it. Because there probably never is going to be that perfect opportunity where everything just aligns perfectly and you have, it's so clear God is speaking to you. Ask them to go to church. Like that's not, just do it.
Yes.
That's what he's calling us to do. You don't need any other permission. And the worst that could happen, we talked about in episode 1, it's like, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yes.
The worst thing that could happen is somebody says no.
Yes. Right. If you're okay with that, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. And maybe they're going to tell you no like a few times.
Maybe
and
it's no right now.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
And let's just ease the pressure on all of that, right? Let's just go for it because people need that invitation.
Yeah. God's
calling us to be part of it. Like we pray for our teams. We do this pretty regularly on Sunday mornings when we pray. We say, God, you're all powerful. You can do anything you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't need my help to connect people with God, but you're choosing to use me anyway.
How awesome is that?
It is amazing. You've called us to be part of this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful. I'm humbled. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But I want to lean into it. I don't want to shy away from that.
Yes.
It's time to do something about it.
So when we put ourselves out there, when we're willing to make the bold move, I fully and firmly believe this. When we say yes, and step out of our comfort zone, we make the bold move, God shows up and we're able to fully experience the life that he created us for. The life that he created us for is not about getting more money and getting more popularity. It's about living into those moments that have eternal significance and living into your purpose. And I think that when we're willing to make the bold move and invite the people in our lives to experience Jesus, let's make that just a regular part of our life. Let's just make that something that oozes out of us and it's clear to everyone around us. This is what matters to me. Like, come join me. This is where life is lived to the fullest. And if the worst thing they can say is no, let's go.
For sure.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I think the final piece I want to circle is I feel the same tension that Kevin referenced. I want to make sure it's important to me that if someone takes that risk, if your bold move is I'm inviting my friend to join me at Crossroads and they said yes, my commitment is if you bring your friend to Crossroads, it's going to be a good experience for them. It's not going to be
proud
awkward.
of what you're inviting someone to.
Yes. Because I don't want anybody to experience the moment I did with the Purple People Eaters or the moment Kevin said where his friend's so bored he's trying to figure out how to sing God Save the Queen. I mean, that's hilarious and awful all at the same time. And that matters. That matters. So I think to wrap things up, the main idea here is that if God has placed a name on your heart and you realize there are people in your life who are desperate for the hope of Jesus, I think what we've talked about today is we got to act with a sense of urgency. We got to be bold. If we know Jesus, if he changes everything and there's people that we know are desperate for him, we've got to be willing to make bold. We've got to be willing to ask them to experience and invite them to experience a changed life. So as we wrap up, I just encourage everybody who's watching, the dozens of people who have joined us today, who will you invite to experience a changed life? Well, let's lean into it. Let's act with a sense of urgency. I think when it's time to make your move, God honors it if you will be bold. Until next time, be bold. Be bold, people. We love you, and we thank you for watching us, all dozens of you.